I'm here with Haolang Zhu, who is the Assistant Administrator for the UNDP, its Regional Director for the Asia Pacific, as well as being the Assistant Secretary General for the United Nations. Mr. Zhu, thank you very much for taking the time to meet with DVB today.
Thank you.
So I'd like to first ask you a little bit about your recent trip, about the nature of UNDP's work in Myanmar, and your discussions specifically on this trip with members of the Rakhine State government as well as on the union level. Can you just perhaps give us a bit of a rundown on the events of this trip?
Sure. First of all, UNDP's work in Myanmar is quite wide-ranging, and covers the whole spectrum of government's reform agenda, from governance reforms to socio-economic development to really sustainable development, environmental protection, and conservation. But for my trip this time, I'm here together with the Director of Operations of Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, and with a focus on what is happening in Rakhine. So I think this time we spent quite a lot of time in Rakhine. And as you said, we met the union government, we met the state government, and we met community leaders from both sides. And we visited some IDP camps, and we also saw quite a number of development projects. So I think it's a very useful visit for us to get the details about this situation, which is very unfortunate, but we also get the complexities of this and potentially what can be done to really move forward.
Now, and that's precisely it, because there's been a lot of deadlock, certainly in terms of aid delivery and development activities in Rakhine, and UN agencies have been accused by Rakhine nationalists specifically and others of bias in terms of their aid delivery. But now, of course, you've re-entered this process of consultation with the government. Are the principles of humanitarian neutrality and of I guess even-keeled development being sacrificed in the name of political expediency?
I would say no, right? Because in any case, even in humanitarian operations, you cannot do it effectively without the support of the government. I think our humanitarian colleagues, have done a stellar job, in providing the essential life-saving services to about 100 IDPs in different camps, in over 60 camps, together with actually international NGO colleagues.
Sorry, how many IDPs?
About over 60, about 100,000 of them. Sure. Yeah, and with a majority being the Muslim population, but a small percentage with the Rakhine population. Mm-hmm. And I think the fact is that in some camps which we visited, the conditions are not very good. It's very clear, and needs really additional support. And in this regard, we're happy that there's now a hope that MSF will come back to provide the much needed health services. Mm-hmm. And I also want to say that we have discussions with government regularly, and regarding the challenges that our humanitarian colleagues face, but also we have dialogues about really what can we do in addition to humanitarian support, right? So in this trip we focused quite a lot on the latter.
How would you rate the government's efforts at reconciling ethnic and religious tensions and difference?
Sure, I think we all know the history of the issues in Rakhine. And we know that there are tensions between the two communities, but there are also tensions between local groups and the union government, historically. So it is a complex issue. And the fact, I think, also is that the support of the international community has been geared towards supporting the Muslim groups, right? And I think, over the last 20 years, the majority of the support has been geared towards support their basic needs. So that does help to create emotions in the Rakhine community that the international community is biased. And so this is one issue that needs to be addressed, because you do need to address the emotions, when you try to address a very difficult humanitarian situation. And also, we should not forget that Rakhine is the second poorest state in the country, and the Rakhine community are equally poor, and they do need support, right? And so this point came out very loud and clear throughout the discussions during our trip. Excuse me. And in discussions with both Rakhine community and also the Rohingya community, as they try to gain recognition, both sides said that we need a development, right? And they know that humanitarian actions is not a long-term solution, right? And they need a development ultimately to reduce the tension, the perceived inequality between the two communities, right? So I think state government supports this view, that they really would like us to not only work on humanitarian issues, but also really scale up development effort.
So how do development efforts look in the context of, most obviously perhaps, the mobility restrictions and the lack of citizenship that Rohingya are? Is it not perhaps somewhat premature to talk about equitable development against this backdrop of, I guess, what can really only justifiably be called state persecution?
And that's a very good question, okay. And I think there are clearly a lot of restrictions at this time about the movement of the Muslim community. And the government is trying to focus on this issue. They are trying to come up with a verification process to get people out of IDP camps. But I think our view is that humanitarian assistance and the development assistance are not, a question of one or the other. I think it must be done at the same time. Development work and efforts can be a confidence-building measure to try to create conditions, for reconciliation and try to bring the communities together. In Mingbia Township, we are working in 20 villages at this time, just to really see how far we can go, right, with development work, to try to bring the communities together. So in a couple of villages, Ms. Jiang Ying of Orcha and myself, and we saw the work of so-called social cohesion committees, which are composed of members from both sides. Okay, they're sitting in the same room. They told us that 1 year ago, when they started, it was very difficult. They didn't trust each other, obviously, right? But after a difficult process, over the last year, and then they have gained the trust. They have planned their small community infrastructure together. They have implemented this infrastructure projects together with cash for work projects. And the Rakhine communities are helping mobility restricted Muslim members of the community to access banking services outside and so forth. So we see the best of the hope that they can live and work together. And they used to do that, right? So they are now trying to, again, make an effort, if we provide the right conditions and right opportunities.
So how involved was the UNDP in the drafting process of this Rakhine action plan that the government is trying to implement? And even if it wasn't necessarily involved in the direct drafting of it, how involved will it be in its implementation, and what does it contain?
I think it is a government plan, right? And the government is very much in the lead in drafting this. And we are in touch with the international community day in and day out, on the plight of the IDPs, and also on the concerns of the Rakhines. And so I think some of the members of the international community and some of us in the UN have always tried to impress upon the government on the key issues that people have concerns about, the potential resettlement, verification resettlement. For example, okay, the key issue in our view is the citizenship at the end of the day, okay, right? And so how to make sure that the IDPs, get their citizenship, okay? how can we not, let the questions of terminology, undermine what is really most essential, that is for people to get their rights, okay? Right. So we want the government to clarify, and we're in discussions with them, whenever we have opportunity on essentially, okay, what is the criteria, right, for gaining citizenship or restoring citizenship? What kind of citizenship are we talking about, right? Do we talk about full rights as other citizens in the country, right? And also, what happens if somebody is not, qualified for citizenship, right? We're asking government for really ensuring that everybody in the process knows about this, okay, right?
So thus, I mean, and that raises a very good question, because of course the citizenship verification process, it's only Muslims and Rohingya specifically that have been asked to provide this very exacting documentation, which is nigh on impossible for them to provide. And so, at least from where I'm sitting, it looks like it's not, as you said earlier, a way for them to get citizenship. It seems like they're putting barriers in their way to acquiring the citizenship. And of course, non-Muslim Rakhine Buddhists certainly don't have to provide that documentation that their ancestors came there before a certain date or whatnot. So, I mean, is it not, in some respects, by kind of going along with this game that the government is playing, I mean, doesn't that raise questions about perhaps complicity in terms of not stopping it before it gets out of control? I mean, is it not the UN's job to set up kind of a firm line and say, this is really not a proper way to proceed?
Again, I think we have to be both, let's say, idealistic and realistic. Okay, the issue is not new. It has been there for many, many years, right? And there are many, many emotions, okay, and they're running, on both sides, and there are also many politics that are involved, right? And I think, in my view, the question that what's the best way to ensuring that people in IDP camps, and also the majority of Muslim population outside the camps, have secure citizenship. I think that at the end of the day, this is what will move the situation forward, and then everybody can really, focus on development, right? Mm-hmm. Developing a better life, developing a better country. So I think this to us is the key, okay? And if there's a pragmatic way to move things forward, we want to see how it works. Now, the government is running a pilot project, right, in one township, and to see how this will work. Mm-hmm. So we're observing very closely. We're trying to involve ourselves with the government to see what lessons we can learn, okay, to make sure that the process is fair, the information is transparent, right? And then people actually get the rights they need and they deserve. I think we're trying to play a pragmatic but constructive role in this process.
Yang Li, who of course is the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, was recently here, and she claimed that on her visit that she faced significant pressure not to use the word Rohingya. I noticed in the press statement that went out, the word Rohingya, or even the word Muslim was omitted, was not part of this, even though what was being referred to very clearly referred to Rohingya. Is there a reason for this omission? Has there been, kind of public pressure to not use that terminology from the government side?
No, I don't think so, yeah. I think in discussions with the government, we discussed this question very openly and frankly, okay. And as I said earlier, emotions run very high, and the terminology stokes very high emotions, okay. And we want to focus on the issue of really the solution. How can we get the rights that people need? That really is our solution, our focus. And we know that the terminology of Rohingya has been used, okay, and even in UN documents, right? And so there's a General Assembly resolution, that uses this terminology, And but we have to recognize the impact that the terminology can have, and actually not necessarily as a facilitator, but as probably impediment, to focus on the real issue, that is citizenship.
Sure.
So I think we will let our let the political process to deal with this issue of terminology. And we don't undermine the importance, underestimate the importance of this issue. And because in the same way, they use the terminology of Bengali, or Rohingya, and this really stokes very, very high emotions on both sides. The government needs to manage these, emotions, right? Because the government has many challenges in different areas. So I think if we can really try to focus on a really pragmatic way to move this forward, and I think what's important is that let's not have misinformation in all discussions from both sides, from both groups. Let's be honest, and let's make sure that information both sides put out is accurate.
How does the UNDP see the current peace process in terms of development?
The peace process, the government, as we all know, is making a very serious effort to push this forward, right? From the UN side, we have a special advisor of the Secretary General, Mr. Vijay Nambia, who is working with the government on this process. And from our point of view, frankly, much the same way for Rakhine, and we know that, humanitarian support will not solve the political problem. Development efforts also will not solve the problem, okay? So we need a political solution. But we believe that we needed to be prepared to shift from humanitarian support to sustainable and inclusive development effort, so that development effort becomes an enabler for a long-lasting solution. So I think really very similar, for Rakhine, we want to really plan and scale up, and we work with the government. We urge the government to have a socio-economic package, right, when they confer citizenship or restore citizenship, to people in IDPs. And I understand that in the action plan they will consider socio-economic support. Although the details is not clear, but they have intention to do so. So I think the same way for the other conflict-affected area, we have to really have a significant development effort.
So have the details of the action plan been shared with UNDP?
No, we're in consultation with them. I think we try to urge them that these are a few things that we would like to see clarity in, right? And we work with donor communities together. We try to reflect the collective concerns, to the government. And I think as they try this, pilot project, we hope that our concerns, and the lessons learned from the pilot will be reflected in the final, action plan. So this remains to be seen.
Mr. Zhu, thank you very much for
taking
the time to meet with you.